there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to night 3 of this murder go-round. Tonight, we get into something a little bit darker. Well, so to speak. It's time for part 2 of Doughboy420's 4-part miniseries, The Call of Autumn, Midnight.
Oh my god, this place is supposed to be like so scary, you guys. Becky, the girl dressed as a sexy nurse, said, looking to her friends. I know. Kelly Monahan said she almost pissed her pants. Amber then added, adjusting her cat ears and scrunching her nose to wiggle the whiskers on her face as she looked in a pocket makeup mirror. I hope Steve will hold my hand through it, Jessica spoke, putting down her little Red Riding Hood. You know he'll do more than that, Jess. Amber jabbed at her friend as the three of them passed by a small group of trick-or-treaters, all your basic costumes, vampire, clown, princess, fairy, along with your typical fanfare of superheroes and the stereotypical kid in a hockey mask. Yeah, what's that supposed to mean? Jessica balked at the accusation as they passed by a child dressed in orange and green, like a pumpkin, holding a burlap sack and entering the front door of a man with a monstrous-looking mask. The man dropped his bowl of candy in a fright, but the girls continued on, ready to meet their dates for the night at the haunted house at the edge of town. Kenny, Jared, and Steve were waiting for them, all dressed as a trio of skeletons. They had saved them a spot in line at the old school building at the far end of town, and they all seemed pretty pumped for the experience. Steve's family had put this whole thing on, and he let everyone know how awesome it was, so the other guys in the trio were ready to go, eager to get inside. There were several people ahead of them in line, all of them in costume, mostly your basic Halloween fanfare like always, but there was one teenager that wore a costume that made him look like he was abducted by an alien. Everyone thought that one was fun and creative. Hey, Steve, Jessica said with a flirtatious sigh. Hey, Steve, Amber taunted her friend and received a look of disdain in return. The greetings between the boys and the girls continued, and they started the idle chit-chat of school life before then going on to the holiday at hand. Myths and legends, boogeymen and ghost stories. I heard that if you blow out all the candles of your pumpkin before the night is through, the spirit of Halloween will come and take you away to hell, Kenny said with a spooky tone. No way, that's stupid, Amber giggled at the far-fetched urban myth. No, it's for real, but it's not just that. If you disrespect Halloween, the spirit of the season doesn't like it. It's like bad-mouthing Christmas to Jesus, Kenny insisted. I don't think they're quite the same, Kenny, Jared said, raising an eyebrow. Step right up, boys and ghouls, and enter the most terrifying experience of your lives, a voice spoke from ahead of them as their turn in line approached. A man wearing bright, white contacts stood at the entrance to the building. He tipped his top hat and greeted them with a sinister smile before welcoming them inside. You are the last guests of the night. After you, we close up this fright, he said with a rhyme, bowing to them and allowing them to pass into the haunted house. The first room was your typical vampire bursting out of a casket and fake bats moving around on strings. It was fun, but it wasn't scary. The next room was a mad scientist cutting up a person on an operating table. The person begged for help, but it was all part of the show. Beside them was another person in an electric chair that was pretending to be electrocuted as plasma balls of various sizes glowed beside them to give the indication of electricity. The next room was huge. Amber figured it had to have been the gym or cafeteria of this old disused school, because the room was massive and was now sectioned off into a maze with several smaller rooms inside. The first small room was filled with balloons of every color that drifted out into the hallway of the maze, covered in neon paint and lit with blacklight. The room had several people dressed as clowns in it, some of them joyous and happy-looking, while others were hideous and terrifying. They moved through the room and into the next of the sectioned-off hallway that led to another set of rooms in the maze. One filled with dolls. The strobe light that leaked in from the hallway made some of them look like they were moving. The next room held a large animatronic Grim Reaper and several mannequins posed as dead bodies in a pile beneath it. Jessica was sure that some of them had to be actors pretending to be dead because they looked way too realistic. She thought that they would jump up to scare the group, but that scare never came. They just laid there, pretending to be dead. Several more rooms came and went, some animatronic jump scares that popped out of fake walls, some actors jumping out from behind moving panels, rooms with demons and bats, with Frankenstein monsters, and a room with giant fake spiders covered in dollar store webbing. Then, finally, the maze section ended where the group ended up in a brightly colored room. The floor, walls, and ceiling were all different colors, all painted with neon paint, and at the opposite end of the room were two doors. One bright pink, one bright blue. The word girls was written on the pink door, while boys was written on the blue one. Obviously a ploy to split them up in order to induce fear. Jared tried to be funny and entered the girls' door, but was quickly stopped by Amber. Buddy. Can't you read? She scolded him, playfully pushing him back with the other boys. Okay, Jessica said with a reluctant sigh, letting go of Steve's hand so that he could go through the opposite door. See you on the other side, he said with a smile and a wink before slipping through the passage. On the other side of the door, the girls found a hallway with bloody children's handprints covering the wall, along with words like help and get out. The girls wondered how the boys were faring on the other side of the wall. Then came the screams. They could hear the boys screaming and begging for help on the other side of the wall. They figured it was just a prank that the boys were playing on them. It had to be. But when they made it through the door on the other side, they found that it was no joke at all. Kenny lay on a cracked tile floor, covered in blood, fresh stab wounds covering his torso as he gasped for air before quickly falling silent. The girls screamed when Jared burst through the door beside them. "We have to run! Go!" he yelled, pushing them along to get away from whatever was behind them. But in the panic of the moment, they quickly found themselves lost in the maze of rooms and stopped, completely out of breath. "What the hell happened?" Becky asked in fright. I don't know. There was this guy in a mask," Jared began. "Well, we are in a haunted house," Amber quipped. "Shut up and let him explain," Becky demanded. "All right, well, there was this guy wearing a mask, like an old comedy and tragedy mask, like you used to see on TV, but this one was like half and half. And this guy, he came out of the shadows and took a swing at Steve with an axe, and lodged the thing into the freaking wall behind him," Jared began to explain the best he could. "Oh my God, is Steve okay?" Jessica asked in fear. "Yeah, he dodged out of the way and took off running while I hid like a freaking coward. I hid, and now Kenny's dead. Oh God, Kenny's dead," he yelled out, just now realizing what had transpired. "Shh," Jessica hushed him. "We need to be quiet. We need to find Steve and get out of here," she added as she began looking around for an exit. In the search for their friend, they found themselves in the alien abduction room. A person was strapped down to the table with mannequins of aliens standing over them with various instruments. What didn't belong, however, were the 3 dead bodies on the floor at their feet. Some teens in costume, including one kid that wouldn't feel out of place in that room. The corpse of the teen boy in the alien abduction costume lay covered in blood, stabbed through the chest. The very same boy that had been in line ahead of them previously. It was then that Steve came rushing through the door, the masked man right behind him, half smiling, half grimacing. The man hobbled a bit as he walked, kind of hunched over with the axe raised in the air over his head with one arm. He didn't say any words, only grunts and growls as he pursued Steve. The girls screamed and everyone ran along with Steve, the masked man right behind them. They ran through several rooms, not knowing what bodies were props and what ones were actual, real, dead people. In all the chaos of the chase, everyone was split up once again. Everyone split off in different directions while Jessica was left alone in a dark room. She cowered in fear as the man in the mask hobbled in front of the open doorway, looked around, and then continued on. She thought for sure that he was going to find her and kill her, but he didn't. And as soon as she felt it was safe, she climbed to her feet and cautiously made her way out into the hallway. Oh no. Tears filled Jessica's eyes as she looked down to find her friend, Becky, dead on the floor, several stab wounds in her chest and neck. She felt herself begin to panic as the emotion welled up inside of her, but she suppressed it and pushed it down. It hurt, but there was no time to grieve. She had to get out of here, and she had to get out now. Jessica moved quickly, but made sure to check around every corner, but in her movements, she began to fear once again for her friend's safety, and it was then that she was startled by a boy's yell of pain. The girl quickly made her way around a corner to find Jared in a pool of blood. Steve huddled over him, hands covered in blood, and he was crying. Steve, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Steve, Jessica said quietly, placing a hand on Steve's shoulder, trying to comfort him, where he immediately turned around and hugged her tightly. Oh no. Jared, Amber said sorrowfully, as she came down the hallway from ahead of them, finding Jared's lifeless body on the floor, her eyes too filling with tears. I'm sorry, Steve, but we have to go. We have to get out of here, Jessica spoke up, urging him to leave immediately. It was then that the masked man hobbled around the corner. He spotted them and grunted loudly, pointing at them and motioning violently towards them as he moved their way, still holding an axe in the other hand. The surviving trio fled for their lives, running through the hallways of the old building. The attraction was closed and all of the actors had gone home, and as they were running, the lights flipped off as the power was cut from outside. They called out for help, but no one heard them. No one would be coming to save them. In the darkness, a scream rang out, and when the red glow of the exit signs kicked on, the source of the screams was found. Amber was dead. Her stomach was cut open, and she laid on her side on the floor. No! Jessica screamed at the sight of the bloodied body of her last remaining friend. The masked man pushed Jessica to the ground and swung his axe at Steve, who once again ducked out of the way, only to produce a knife from his pocket and drive it into the side of the masked man, who dropped to the floor like a ton of bricks. Oh my God, Steve, you saved me! You did it! You... Jessica began to celebrate the slaying of the masked assailant, but soon stopped when she saw the knife that he was holding. The masked man had an axe, and every one of the bodies, every single one of them, was found with stab wounds. The killer didn't have an axe. He had a knife. Jessica looked up from the knife to see Steve's face as both of them realized what the other now knew. Steve lunged for Jessica, but she took off running, bolting for the direction that the exit signs pointed. She made her way around the corner and found the last set of double doors. She pushed her way through to find herself outside of the old school building, the doors closing and locking again behind her. The girl screamed and fled as fast as she could, Steve bursting out the door after her, and before she could go any further, he was upon her. I was gonna get away with it. Killed some guys here earlier, and I was gonna kill you too, but that dumb mute cousin of mine had to get in the way. I was gonna use him as a scapegoat, but he just couldn't leave well enough alone. Now he's dead, and soon you will be too, Steve growled, choking her with one hand while the other raised the knife above his head. Then, without any warning, Jessica was covered with a cascading waterfall of blood as the machete lodged halfway through the neck of her attacker. Then the second swing came, lopped his head right off his shoulders, where it rolled onto the ground beside Jessica. The girl looked up to find a man in a strange outfit. Half of the shirt was orange, while the other half was a dark green, almost black. The same held true for his pants, half and half, only the colors were reversed, and covering his face was an angular mask of a pumpkin with blackened eyes and a jagged, scary smile. The masked killer simply looked down at Jessica before he turned and walked off into the shadows, leaving her to run off in fear and shock over what had transpired.
Well, some people say that the scariest things happen around Halloween. Others say the scariest things happen around midnight. And when you combine the two, terribly great things are bound to happen. And I hope you happen to stop by tomorrow for this 13-day marathon with Night 4. Man, what time is it? Uh-oh.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.